Good morning, and thanks for joining us here on Condo Solutions every Monday morning from 9 to 10 o'clock. We talk about those things that affect you in your condo or your HOA. It is a community service program, so you can call in if you like. 220-9788, 220-WSTU is the number in the studio. And feel free to ask us a question, and you don't have to tell us your name. You don't have to tell us your association. In fact, we prefer we don't have your association so that other people will, maybe not stop listening thinking that it doesn't apply to them. Because many of the problems are not unique to your association. They may be similar all over the Treasure Coast, just sometimes little things are all that is different, but the basic problem is the same. So we're here to kind of address some of those issues. We will talk about your specific issue and maybe a little broader discussion so that if somebody is out there that's got a little different circumstances, that we cover it. So feel free to give us a call. You're doing somebody else a favor if you call in, because some people are shy about calling in on the radio. So if you've got a problem and you want to ask about it, feel free. 220-9788, 220-WSTU. So to answer those questions, my name is Mark Breckbill. I'm a CPA and a licensed community association manager. But the person that really you've been here to listen to most of the time is Peter Mullengarden. Peter's our attorney, and he's the guy that has all the answers. Good morning, Peter.
Good morning, Mark. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm sure you're not doing so great after this last tournament, right? I'm taking your name off of anything associated with the program. I'm not. Come on. How good could your school be? You guys set a record. It's not one you want to set, right?
I know. You know what? I didn't want us to be a one seed. I didn't want us to be the number one overall seed, just because of something like this.
Well, the good thing is, though, your other school did well. Oh, no, wait a minute. They lost in the first round, too, didn't they? Sorry. I just couldn't resist. You got Miami and Virginia in both this year, and they get beat the first round. What can I say? But anyway, you're right. They shouldn't have been a number one, I guess. No, frankly, I thought the ACC was really good. I didn't see any way Virginia was going to lose that first game. I really didn't. I didn't see how that was going.
Who saw that coming?
No, I don't think they did. And I mean, I when I was looking at some of the 1s and 16s, that's not the one that I thought was. There was a couple 1s in there that I thought were overrated, but Virginia wasn't one of them. You know, you go through the ACC and
they overlook. Look. Not that this is a sports talk radio show, but they overachieved during the year. I mean, they weren't, quite frankly, that good. They weren't. I mean, just they played well. They somehow had a great year.
Yeah, but you don't go through the
ACC. They won 20
ACC.
games. They won 20 games in the ACC. It was amazing.
I know.
Anyway,
but anyway, it's my team's gone too.
On.
So I had I thought the SEC was a little stronger, and now the only team that everybody said didn't belong in from the SEC.
Syracuse?
No, Texas
A&M.
Kentucky. A&M.
A&M crushed Carolina yesterday.
Yeah, and everybody was wondering why the heck they were even in, and they're still hanging around. So we got them and Kentucky left, but interestingly enough, I think the ACC still has 4 of the 16 teams are ACC. And for those out there that are FSU fans, congratulations. And Hamilton, congratulations. Your job is safe one more year. If you'd have lost in the first round this time, you'd be home. I think that would have been done for him. But he's hanging around now, and probably that's a mixed blessing for those FSU guys, because here's a coach that just can't produce the winner, and they're just about ready. They've given him as much time as they possibly can. They're just about ready to get rid of him, right? And now he finally wins. So now they'll have to put up with this again for another 10 years because he won a national championship or something. So it could be kind of interesting.
Oh.
But anyway,
they're not going to win the national championship. But.
Well, you never know. I mean, the one thing I heard him say on this tournament, and I know Mike is a big sports guy, but one of the things that I heard him say on this tournament, which I 100% agree with, is at this point, going into the Sweet 16, every single team can legitimately say they got a shot at winning.
No, there is no dominant team.
Yeah, and I mean, usually you got somebody that is favored strong, but and they don't always win, but at least they're favored. But and teams are talking about getting the right matchups and everything else. But at this point, it's kind of like if I'm here, I can win. It doesn't make a difference who I'm playing. So it's going to be interesting. It's always fun. But I was running in somewhere around 96,000th in the CNN poll or something like that, and then so I was pulling in there for a while, and then everybody let me down. So anyway, let's talk condos and HOAs. 220-9788, 220-WSTU. So if you've got a problem with your condo association or homeowners association, for example, they're not letting you hold up that University of Maryland at wherever, Baltimore City, and you can't put that flag in your front yard, and you're upset about that. The question is, can they do that or not? So, and the answer is, if you put a little American flag in the corner, you're probably okay. But anyway, 220-9788, 220-WSTU. We'll be happy to address your questions. So, looking at some of these things with the condos and with what's going on with some of the things that are taking place, I didn't know if you had anything specific you wanted to touch on this week, Peter. If you had an issue or a topic that you wanted to discuss. I know I had an issue come up recently on a co-op, but if you've got some things you want to talk about, we can do that too.
Well, the legislature did pass a bill changing, some of the laws. Hasn't been signed yet by the governor, as far as I know, so they're not effective. I don't know any reason why he would not sign it, but so there are some things that are going to be changing for this upcoming year. We can talk about that a little bit if you'd like.
Sure.
I have not gone through it cover to cover yet. Started to. But, Mark, do you want to start with whatever issue you're
my co-op had?
That you want to talk about first?
Well, I guess one of the things that I was going to get at is, and it's a little bit consistent with changing the law from last year, not from this, or from this previous year, not from the current session, was we're now at the point where if you're required to have financial statement work done, there's a dollar threshold, and there used to be a unit threshold, and the unit threshold is gone now. So it's just dollar threshold. I think it's 150, 300, and 600. I think is what our numbers are now.
500.
Oh, 500. Yeah, that's right. It should be 600. That's why I always forget. But anyway, but with those numbers, so what it amounts to is that if you're under 150, you have a financial report. 150 to 300, you're having a compilation. 300 to 500, you're having a review, and then anything over 500, you're having an audit.
Yeah, 500,000.
Yeah, 500,000. And if you don't have and it used to be that if you didn't have a certain number of units, you were exempt from that. So now you're not. So if you fall in those ranges, the question that came up is somebody had said, well, you can't waive that requirement for the audit, or you can waive the audit for the audit or the compilation or whatever it is, and so the one of the things that did go by the wayside is it used to be that you had to, let's say you were having to do an audit, and you decided you didn't want to spend that money, and so each year you were, and the common term is waive the audit, but you're really not. You cannot waive your financial reporting completely. What you're doing is replacing it with a lower level of service. So if you were required to do an audit, you can reduce that requirement to any other level, including a financial report, which doesn't have to be done by a CPA. So technically, when you're waiving the audit, you're actually just reducing your requirement down to a financial report, which is the minimum that you can do, and you have to still do it, which is a problem because, frankly, most people don't know how to do a financial report the way the state requests. It's not what you get from your property manager. It's not what you get there. That's not going to meet the requirement. The financial report is a pure cash basis report, and very, very few, even an association won't have their regular records on that basis because they're required to maintain them on an accrual basis. So that's going to be your issue. But you can reduce, and you can reduce down to that level of that minimum level of financial report. You didn't used to be able to do that more than 3 consecutive years. The 4th year you had to still do the service, the audit, the compilation, whatever it was. Now you do have the ability to waive that, to reduce that every single year. So every single year you can take a vote. It has to be a vote of the members. It's supposed to be before the end of the year, and you can go ahead and take that vote and reduce that requirement every single year now. But you have to have a vote, and it can't be your board. It has to be a member vote. So anyway, that's what we got into. Peter, did you want to correct anything I said there, or add anything to that?
No, they dropped the requirement that you couldn't waive more than 3 years in a row. I don't know if you said that or not.
Yeah.
But that was.
And that's where this confusion came in on the co-op, is because somebody had said, well, you can't do that every year, because I do have some associations that were having work done every 3rd year or whatever. Just they had been doing that before. They wanted something, but they just didn't want to pay for it every year. So the only other thing I would say for those people that are dealing with the financial sides of the HOAs and the condos, if you're in that situation where you're required to have a compilation done, waive it, reduce that. That compilation is worthless. I mean, it is a worthless level of service. Shouldn't be in the law. This is not an opinion. This is a fact. And you should just waive it. You're getting nothing for your money. All you're doing is having a CPA read your financial statements. There's no work being done. They're not doing an audit. It's not the same thing. They're not looking at stuff. They're not confirming things. They're not making sure your cash is there. They're not doing any of those things. If you really want to use your money wisely, have the CPA do the financial report that you need to do, and not do the compilation. Just do a preparation engagement. Have them do the financial report, so that you actually do the financial report in accordance with statute. But otherwise, if you're in that situation, you're paying $800, $900, $1,000, $1,200. It may seem cheap. You're throwing that money down the drain. You're paying that person to do zero. They might be doing more than that, but you're paying them to do nothing. All they have to do is hand them the financial statements, and they just have to look at them. You're paying them $1,200 or $1,000 just to have them look at them. That's not worth it. Trust me, it's not worth it. So, do something there. But otherwise, and frankly, if you're in that $200,000 range, $250,000, maybe $300,000, just under $300,000, have the review done. That is worth something, but the compilation is worth $0. So I would definitely waive that process.
Okay.
And go there. All right. So what we got from a new law standpoint that I can bash for you this morning?
Well, I'm just going to bounce. I'm not going to cover everything. I'll just bounce around here a little bit. Hitting a few of the either things I think are more interesting, or some of the highlights. By the way, they in the record keeping, they did delete the specific requirement that all accounting records must be maintained for at least 7 years. Whatever that was stricken, I think, because the overall one says.
Yeah, I wonder why they did that.
Says 7. So, but that was stricken. But some of the more interesting things, they had changed the law a year ago to say that if you were an association with 150 more units with no timeshares, then you had to have a website by July 1st of 2018.
Yes.
Well, that's now been extended to January 1st, 2019, as far as having the website. And they refined the language to say rather than an association with 150 more units, it's an association managing a condominium with 150 or more units.
A condominium, huh?
Yeah. Now that's interesting when you have a multiple condominium.
Yeah.
Each one could have 20, and you can have 100 of them.
Yes. Yes.
So what does that mean?
I get it. Yeah, that's what I think it would mean. You got to.
Do you have to do one for? Do you still need one, or maybe you don't need one anyway? So.
Well, and you know what's interesting about that as well is okay. So if you're a property management company, and now it doesn't really, but you look at that. And if you're a property management company managing multiple.
No, it says association. Doesn't say.
I know, but that's where they're going to go next. Because
I don't know. Well, perhaps, but anyway, they did extend that to January 1st, 2019. Because it was July 1st, 2018. So that's an extension on that.
And that makes sense from just a business standpoint because most of these things, it's easier. Most of the associations are calendar year ends, or a lot of them are calendar year ends, so it's a whole lot easier for them to get that in place for the beginning of their year rather than because a lot of them are taking, there's a lot of things that they're going to do if they don't have a really good website. Many of them are going to upgrade those websites, and not only are they going to do communication issues, but they'll probably be addressing payment issues, and they'll be addressing maybe voting issues, electronic voting issues, and some of those types of things to allow those bigger associations to have more transparency. So it probably was good to start those January 1, give them a little bit more time. You'd have to be in place almost
I think so.
by now.
And as far as things that are on the website, they clarified that as far as what has to be included in the material, before it said any management agreement, lease, or other contract for which the association is a party, or which the association has or the owners have any obligation or responsibility. That's been changed to say a list of all executory contracts or documents, okay, to which the association is a party, or that the owners or the association have an obligation. And then it also said, now what they added to is, and after bidding for the materials or the equipment or services is closed, you have to have a list of the bids received by the association within the past year. And now it also says that summaries of bids for materials, equipment, or services which exceed $500 must be maintained on the website for 1 year, or in lieu of summaries, copies of the bids may be posted.
Now, Peter,
so that's been changed.
Since we're talking about that, could you just give us a little bit of a refresher in terms of what's required to be bid and what the bidding requirements are, just so people know, because there's a lot of times there's a lot of confusion about that.
Yeah, for condominiums, it's basically any when you are attempting to obtain goods or services or equipment, materials, whatever, that costs more than 5% of the budget, including reserves, if any, then you must obtain competitive bids. Now, there's no minimum number of bids. It just says competitive bids. So literally, there can be two, as long as it's more than one.
Because bids is a plural number.
Bids is plural.
So
it doesn't say three. It doesn't say minimum three. Now, if your documents say three, get three.
Right.
Okay. Or if you have some association rule or policy that says three or whatever, meet that. But in the absence of that, you just need two. To comply with the statute. You're not required to accept the lowest bid. You are not required to get bids in the event of an emergency. It has to be a bona fide emergency, not just some manufacturing emergency. And you're not required to get bids if there's only one producer or one supplier of that service or that material or equipment in the county where the condominium is located. So if there's only one guy literally in town, so to speak, that does that service or produces that thing, then you're not required to get bids. You're also not required to get bids for contracts with the employees, manager, engineer, attorney, accountant, landscape architect. Now, that's not to say that you can't get bids for all those services or all those things, but you're not required to.
Right.
So that's the exception
and
to the bidding.
And on those kind of things, is there an exception? We're going to pick up a call, but is the going forward on those kind of things? The question that I have is, when we're looking at some of that type of activity, it does exempt the professionals and the property managers. It exempts those types of people. But one of the questions I had, Peter, is, do you have to do that every year? If it's an annual type of thing that's not exempted, do you have to do that every year?
What if you're in a contract that's
let's say you've got
renewing?
that you've got a contract that's renewing. It's not one of those exempted parties. Do you have to go out and get bids every year if it exceeds the 5% of the budget?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean,
so
I can double check the statute, but yeah.
And you don't. And just so to clarify, there's no requirement to take the lowest bid. So
correct.
I want to make sure people think that you've got to take the lowest bid. But we've got a caller. Tim, go ahead.
Hi, Peter. I have a question on material alteration. The documents are silent on this, but in our association, in fact, I'm on the board of the association, have just voted to change our laundry. We have had pay per use laundry machines, and they have voted to eliminate that. And a lot of the residents up north are kind of mad because we actually have had an income from doing this. Would that be a material alteration?
No, what exactly are they doing again? I'm sorry.
They're outsourcing their laundry. So they have somebody that comes in and does, and they charge for the laundry use, and that's an income stream for the association.
No, we actually have. We own the machines. They're coin-operated machines, or token-operated, actually. And the board has just ruled that starting the 1st of next year, they're going to eliminate, and all the laundry is going to be free. Of course, it's going to cost our fees will have to go up because of this. And the people up north that don't live here all the time, which is quite a few, are quite upset about this, that they had no say in it. Would that have to go to a vote as a material alteration, or is the board fine doing that? That's all I really want to know.
Okay.
That's a good question.
Well, for something to be a material alteration, you basically have to be doing something with respect to the form, shape, elements, specifications of the common elements that
Correct.
appreciably affects or influences the use, function, or appearance. Okay, so applying that analysis or that test to your facts, changing these from, I guess, machines that were owned by the association.
Right, coin-operated machines actually to non-coin-operated machines. That would be the change.
But when you say not coin-operated, so free for use, or
Free for use, correct.
Okay. Most likely not. I mean, you're not changing the use of the rooms. They're still going to be used for laundry, okay?
Correct.
You're not changing the use or function. You're not changing the appearance because they're still coin-operated. The only potential argument.
No, they won't be coin operated. They're going to be free.
No. But I'm just saying there's still they're not going to be they're not going to look that much different. But the only potential, I guess, to step back to say use, if going from the coin operated to, I guess, the free machines or whatever, if that's going to potentially increase the use or something like that, greater than what it was before, and make it more difficult to do your laundry. I mean, maybe, because the only case I'm thinking about was there is a arbitration case from several years ago where an association installed a pool heater, okay? And they held that to be now I guess not even the same thing as machines, but they held that to be a material alteration because the installation of the pool heater was going to increase the use of the pool a lot, so they said that was going to materially affect the use of the pool. So the only thing I can say here is, and it might be a stretch though, to be honest with you, is if going from the coin to the non-coin would materially or appreciably affect the use
what about this,
the laundry rooms.
What about this? In their situation, what you had was a situation where basically there was no assessment for that activity because it was per use. It was not an assessment. So, and now all of a sudden you're going to a situation where people are going to be assessed for use. So you're in effect changing their base that's going to be assessed. And the question is, I think along those lines, since laundry was not provided in the basic package when it was originally established, and thus included in what would have to be reserved for or assessed, now you're basically adding something to the association's requirements that weren't there before, and would that arguably be a material alteration?
Well, it's not a material alteration. You might argue whether that's a valid common expense. Okay.
Well, and they're adding something. It's like, for example, if you had, to me, if you added a garage, if you added,
that's different.
Yeah, but I mean, you are adding another cost to. Let's see. Let me think of something different. I mean, something you wouldn't have to have. Let's say, for example, you're going to put a gym in there. And you're going to put some exercise equipment in. And, maybe before they had that, maybe there was a place that they could go and join nearby and pay or whatever, so they didn't do that. Now all of a sudden the association decides, well, we're going to put our own in for free. That's the only thing I'm looking at. I mean, I know it's not a lot in this case, but
that's clearly an alteration. I mean, if you're going to change the use of something from something to a gym, okay, or take a gym out and make it into something else, that's obviously
yeah, and it's hard to do because it's a big thing. But
what
I'm talking about is if I bought a unit, let's say I was looking around for a unit, I knew I was going to be seasonal, right? So I don't want a unit that I'm going to pay a lot of money off season for because I'm not going to be there. So now I'm looking for things where the use of it is that the cost of it is tied to the use, not necessarily to the item itself. So now all of a sudden the association starts taking all of those items which caused me to buy and converts them to things that I got to pay for all year round, even though I'm not there, and I'm now subsidizing the year-round residents when I didn't intend to do that before because I'm not there to use it. I just wonder, I'm wondering if there's some avenue there where, I mean, from my standpoint personally, this is the kind of thing that I would get member buy-in anyway if I was a board member. But I mean, why do you want to antagonize a bunch of people? And I'm in favor of having this. I would be in favor of having the association pay for this stuff. I know when I was staying out on the island, it was a pain in the rear to get tokens. I never had tokens, and I'm always doing my laundry on Sunday, and I never had tokens. So I understand all of that, and it's probably cheaper overall. But I can also understand that if I'm there 3 months out of the year, and now I'm subsidizing somebody who's there the rest of the year, I might not have intended to do that. I may have to because I'm in an association. So that's the question I have. I mean, because of that aspect of it, because of the change in the services that the association is going to provide. Before they were not providing laundry services, now they are, and so to me that might, to me, I thought that would be a difference. It's not a big number, but it might be something that would be an impact.
Yeah, the actual impact is right now. It is in the budget, and the association does use that for an expense, buying the machines, and we have a reserve for them. But the income all went on the income side. So what we're going to lose is about a $10,000 a year income, and that'll have to be made up in the budget. That's
but you're not really, Tim. Work. From a financial standpoint, you're really not losing that income. All you're doing is shifting it. That's my point. You're not losing it. You're just shifting it. Those people who were using the service were paying for it.
Correct.
Now everybody's going to pay for it. You're still going to generate $10,000 probably from it. I mean, if you want. Or that $10,000 is going to go to other things, you know. But your bottom line is the bulk of that revenue was still coming from members, so you guys were all paying it. It's just who was paying it.
Correct.
And those people that are living up north are saying, hey, it wasn't me. I don't want to pay it. You know, so I understand that. But I don't know.
I think it's probably not immaterial alteration, okay? Unless... You know, you can make the argument that, you know, the coin versus non-coin is a material change of use. You know, where, you know, before you were paying individual and now you're not. I would argue it's not a material alteration at the end of the day.
Yeah. And
okay.
It's interesting because I tell you, Tim, you know, like I said, you know, it's going to come down to Peter's probably right, but if it was me, you know, I would at least take a vote and figure out what because if you've got more than half your people that are upset by it, what good is it? The next thing you know, you'll have a new board, and the new board will throw out the machines and put the other ones back in again. So, you know, it's probably just better for the association to resolve the issue based on who's in there at the time. And unfortunately, you know, in many situations, the majority wins, and it, you know, may not make everybody happy, but as long as it makes 51% of the people happy, you at least know that next election people aren't going to get thrown off the board just so somebody can vote in, you know, coin-operated laundry equipment again. So that's what I would do.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you.
Good call. Thank you.
Good luck.
Okay, bye.
Bye. You know, Peter, that it is. It's funny because you get to the. I mean, that's a small item, and I actually, you know, I actually have been in that situation. A lot of the associations out on the island are like that, and because they're resort, you know, they were originally built not as full-time residences, but as you know, seasonal residents. And there's still a lot of them out there. And so a lot of people bought into associations out there based on the amenities that were there that were seasonal in orientation and how much it was going to cost to carry the thing off season. So, you know, so the higher that the assessments are off season, and, you know, that you've got to carry off season, the more difficult it makes. So a lot of people look for, you know, for those associations where more of those services are outsourced, you know, where you're buying them from another place or you're paying per use. And, you know, it's interesting that this is one of those items, but I think we're going to see more and more of that coming up and we're struggling right now with one of the bigger items is cable service. And so, you know, let's kind of talk a little bit about that because it's a bigger number. So let's say that your association has continually been provided internet access and cable service on a bulk contract basis, and now they're going to switch out of that. And here's a situation where we're going the other way. You got people that are up north for 9 months out of the year, and they're screaming that, hey, I'm paying for cable down there, and I'm not in the unit. So I shouldn't have to pay for it. That's my option. Plus, I got all these packages that if I go direct, I'm gonna get exactly what I want and pay for exactly what I want, and I don't want the base package. But is access to internet and TV and phones, is that a basic service? Is that something that the association has to provide, or is
No.
it? No. So it is
They
not.
can. They're authorized to.
So it's not a material
Now, unless
alteration.
the documents say they shall do it or they must do it, but by statute, it's something. It's a power that they may do, not that they must do.
So what about let's
service.
Yeah, let's take out the internet and the TV and leave it as phone. Do I have to provide phone service? Do I have to provide the ability to have phone service? Because at that point, that may be the only way phone service is available, because I may not have it wired for anything other than internet phones at this point. Do I have an obligation to go run wiring for that, or no? I mean, it's kind of an interesting thing, because based on the way things have changed, you start getting into this question of what services. It's not physical now, it's services, because so many things are being replaced by a service where there was a physical thing. Now it's a service issue. So what I'm wondering, like on some of these things, do I have an obligation? If I bought based on that being a service that I believe is required, and then all of a sudden the association isn't going to willing to provide that service anymore, I may not be able to get the service I want at that point, because it may be just cost prohibitive for me to run. For example, if I'm the only person in my building that wants Comcast, that wouldn't be me, by the way, but if I was crazy enough to be the only person that wanted Comcast, then do I have to spend $30,000 running cable into the building, or whatever? So it's interesting. I mean, it really.
Well, the law does say that the association cannot prevent or prohibit any owner from obtaining cable service from a duly franchised cable provider in the area.
Right.
Even if they have a bulk agreement. So if the association has a bulk agreement with one company, and I want another that's duly franchised and authorized to provide service in that area, I'm allowed to contract with that one. I still have to pay my bulk to the association, but if I want this other service, now that company may not want to wire the building to provide service to one person or one customer, but the association can't stop them.
Yeah.
If they're the authorized franchisee.
But they effectively can, because that business is not going to do it for one, and so even just to run it to the building might cost $10,000. So if I want service, my service is
I understand
$100 a month plus $10,000.
As a practical matter, that's correct. But
Yeah.
I was just telling you because you were raising the issue.
Yeah.
What if I want? Well, yeah, if you can convince someone to give it to you.
That's right.
But I'm not aware where an association is obligated to provide, let's say, phone service. Now, obviously they can't stop the utility, whatever the phone utility is, from, if there is any, whatever, from using the utility easements and whatever, to provide service to the building. But that's not an association service.
Yeah.
The association has to make sure that the building has power too, and water, sewer, all that kind of stuff.
It's going to be interesting, because as we go forward, more and more things are going to be services, not physical things. You know what I mean? When you start looking at some of the one of the things that's really just starting to become popular are these wired homes, these electronic houses, where they have all these services that can be controlled via the internet, via via all different types of things. So, and
actually, this kind of leads me just. I'm going to cut you off for a second.
Okay, go ahead.
Because we were talking about the new law. This is not exactly what you're talking about, but it's kind of in the ballpark. Okay? What's popular now is what? Electric cars, right?
Right.
Well, they've addressed that now. This is under 718.113, which is the alteration section. Basically, with the legislature finding that, electric cars, are a good thing as far as their impact on on the environment and blah blah blah. So they've adopted new legislation regarding the installation of a vehicle charging station that owners can basically put in their own. So now the law says that a declaration of condominium or other restrictive covenant cannot prohibit an owner from installing an electrical vehicle charging station within the boundaries of an owner's limited common element parking area. And the board cannot prohibit an owner from installing a charging station, within that, but it is subject to certain.
Does that include
limits.
the restriction? Is there any language in there that makes reference to not being able to restrict the use of an electric vehicle?
Well,
because I'm getting an electric truck here pretty quickly. So go ahead.
But what it's knowing you probably just charge other people to come in there and charge up at yours.
That's right.
But like a little not a gas station, but electric station. But there are some requirements. So it's not just a blanket. You can go ahead and do it. The installation cannot cause irreparable damage to the property. The electricity must be separately metered and paid by the owner that installs the charging station. The owner who installs the station is responsible for the installation cost, operation, maintenance, and repair, including insurance, hazard, and liability. And the association can enforce the payment of those costs through its lien authority. If the owner or his successor owner of the unit decides that they don't need the charging station anymore, they're responsible for the cost of the removal of the station. And again, you can also enforce payment of that through the lien. Of course, this is at they decide. So what does that mean? They decide. The association can require the owner to comply with any safety requirements, bona fide safety requirements consistent with applicable building codes or recognized safety standards for the protection of the property and people. The association can require the owner to comply with architectural standards, reasonable architectural standards adopted by the association regarding the dimension, placement, or external appearance of the charging station, provided that those standards do not prohibit the installation of the charging station or substantially increase the cost. So you can't say, it has to be, diamond encrusted with, whatever. It has to be reasonable. You can require that the owner have use a licensed and registered electrical contractor or engineer familiar with the installation and the requirements of these charging stations. And you can also require that the owner provide a certificate of insurance naming the association as an additional insured on the owner's policy for any claim related to the installation, maintenance, or use of the charging station. And finally, they can require that the association be reimbursed for any increase in insurance premium costs related to the charging station. And the association basically must provide, or there is going to be deemed an implied easement over the common elements to the owner for the purpose of putting the charging station in and furnishing power to it. So, long story short, an owner can install a charging station, unless this gets vetoed, which I don't think it will, subject to some of those requirements or all those requirements that I just mentioned.
Now,
so that's sort of interesting.
Yeah, and now for Tim, who just called, and he lost his revenue from his washing machines and dryers. Here's another revenue source. I'm serious. If you get ahead of this thing, if the associations get ahead of this thing, and they'll get somebody like Tesla or somebody that'll agree to put one of these things in. or FP&L or somebody will subsidize it, just like we did with.
Well, it didn't say here you were actually selling the service. Okay, so I'm not sure that's the same.
But you know what?
Not the same thing.
If you have something there that you can make it available, and it's got to be separately metered, so you just charge for it. It's separately metered. Could be with a card. You know what I mean? You could pay for your use. So it's interesting. I think that the FP&L just put up some solar panels over the parking lot in at Kiwanis Park here in Stewart, and it's interesting because it provides shade to the cars when they're there at Kiwanis Park, but it's providing power to Florida Power and Light. And will that be the next thing out on the island, for example, is there's a source of revenue that's being generated all year round that the associations might be able to get some sort of a fee on. But also I understand that our city manager, which I think is pretty cool, has already had some discussions and is negotiating with Tesla to have a couple charging stations in next to that same facility there. So that and actually it's pretty smart. He's not putting the fast chargers in there. He's putting the ones that take a little longer, because then that gives people the opportunity. They're not just going to stop and charge and leave. They'll maybe come downtown for a couple hours and enjoy our good nature, so to speak, and have while their car's being charged. But I can see that happening out on the island. I can see somebody being first in the game out there and getting.
I think you're going to see a lot of this. Personally, I've already had inquiries from my clients about charging stations. So, in the past.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think this will be something that you'll see a fair amount of, to be quite honest. I know up my area, I'm not that I'm making a plug for them or anything, but I see more and more Teslas all the time. Right. So, I got a feeling that this is going to be something that you will see people 100% are going to be making requests to install these charging stations.
Right.
The other change I want to quickly mention is because it got a lot of publicity last year was the term limit provision.
Yes.
Where last year they changed it to you cannot serve more than 4 consecutive 2-year terms, which no one really quite understood why it was, why they focused on 2-year terms. So they did change it to say that now board members may serve a board member may not serve more than 8 consecutive years. So they got rid of the 2-year requirement.
And did they say when it starts? Did it start with?
Doesn't say that.
So we still don't know if they've been in
office. I'm going to assume it's going to be after the effective date of the statute, not retroactive.
Right.
But they did make an interesting change. It says that they can serve that they can't serve more than eight consecutive years, unless approved by an affirmative vote of owners representing 2/3 of all votes cast in the election, or there are not enough eligible candidates. So it sounds like you could run if you get more than 2/3 of the votes cast in that election. Let's say you are running for your 9th year, you're elected. I guess if you don't get 2/3, then you're not.
Right.
And then the next guy down is, or person is. And the other interesting change is, the law up to recently says that you can serve up to 2-year terms. Now it says board members may serve terms longer than 1 year if permitted by the bylaws. It looks like we're back now again potentially having 3-year board member terms, which we used to have, and then it got knocked out for several years by requiring not more than 2-year terms. It looks like now if you want to have a 3-year term board, staggered 3-year terms, you can do that if your bylaws so provide.
So
or
now,
your articles.
if you're into the third term of 3-year terms, does it require a 2/3 vote? Because 1 year of that's going to be an excessive.
I don't know. Good question. That's a real good question.
So, well, why don't they just leave people alone?
I don't know.
That's one I don't think they needed to get in there. And if you don't really like who's running your association, don't vote for them. Yeah, don't vote for them.
I kind of agree. Don't overregulate. You know me.
Yeah, I know.
That's my view.
I know. So. Well, we kind of burned through this hour, so to speak. But, Tim, your question was a great one. I really like those kind of things. It makes you start thinking about some things that are happening and the way the world's changing. And appreciate that call and your concern there. Peter, I do appreciate all the things that you do for the show. And, in fact, I'm going to get Mike here to get that promo. I'm usually running late, so I never hear that first promo, and it just talks about me, so I need to get your name on there too. So we'll get that done because it's just the two of us, and you should take as much flack as I do. So anyway, thanks for joining us right here on WSTU 1450 AM on your dial, your historic, famous station.